Hello, everyone. It's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is doing okay. It is 5:19 p.m. Let's see, Eastern, anyway. I'm checking my sound. I hope everyone is doing all right this evening. And by the way, I want to thank everyone for your help with the channel. Whether you like, share, assist through Patreon or Super Chat, it's always appreciated. Um, So I don't know how long this one is going to be. I don't think it's going to be long, but I did want to discuss it. This was a bone-shattering poll to me. I nearly fell out of my chair, and if I was standing up, I nearly, my knees buckled a bit. Um, I'm a big, burly, hunking man, so not going to hit the ground, but it buckled. I was somewhat ashamed of this poll, if I'm being honest. This poll came out in the Hill, and they asked. It was a Harvard poll. I think it was Harvard Harris. So it was a real poll. What did people think about abolishing ICE? The number is jarring. Like it's one of those things that is not just a loser. It is beyond a loser. Now, I somewhat understand why. I don't think people are just, fucking insane or sadists. But look at the respondents. 89% of the people, when asked whether they would abolish ICE, said no. Let's see, where is it? Right here. According to the latest Harvard Harris poll, 70% of the registered voters, including 69% of independents, think we need stricter enforcement of the country's immigration laws. 69% of those polled said ICE should not be abolished. Further, the survey found tremendous opposition, 84% to sanctuary cities, practice of not notifying immigration authorities when the illegal immigrant has been arrested for crimes and taken into custody. I'm sorry, 69% said ICE should not be abolished. That's still a high number. I mean, you're watching kids being ripped away from their babies. That's kind of a rough thing to look at, especially when they have ICE on the back of the guy, of the brute that's ripping that child, that screaming, howling child away from a mother. 69% of us say, yeah, that baby ripping is what we need in this country. We need to put families in concentration camps. We need to try to force labor on immigrants who are coming into the country seeking help. That's what we need in America. It's a capitalistic way. That number is amazing. That number is amazing. And what it means, Democrats have grabbed onto this issue lock, stock, and barrel because they believe it's something that they're okay with. Doesn't affect their donors in the least. And maybe you can even make an argument that it does. I mean, this is, after all, the business class. And you heard Hillary Clinton. Oh, I didn't let you hear that. Damn it. There's a speech that I have where Hillary Clinton is making pitch for immigration reform. And one of the things she says is, our businesses. We need them for our businesses. Now, if you're a middle class worker, or if you're a low end of the economic scale worker, which at this point half of us are, you can see that slightly threatening. I mean, after all, you're saying work, and the Republicans always make this argument that they're stealing our jobs, they're stealing our jobs, they're stealing our jobs. And you've associated immigration at this point with labor. Add to that stress. Add stress. Add stress of a party that's not representing your interests, even though they howl about issues of identity. Minus the economics. The tether that ties people together on stuff like this, I would argue, are the economics. The Democrats drop the economics and focus purely on the identity. It is easy to scream about somebody's identity at the point where your particular political identity is, interwoven into this particular thing. But the problem here is you have your base, part of your base, eating itself. You've broken up blacks, whites, Hispanics, LGBTQ. That's great. But Among that group is also the group of the working class. You can scare blacks, Hispanics, LGBTQ because they have a certain historical framework in this particular country that they're aware that things can be worse. You can't do that with whites, however. And so, even though somebody may be working class, you can use that argument if you have nowhere else to go. But the fact is, they do. They have more than one party to vote for. And instead of you will have nowhere else to go, they find somewhere else to go. And that 20% that moved from Obama to Trump found refuge in a Republican Party that told them whatever they needed to tell them to get them to vote on the dotted line. Kind of like what you did to them in the first place. Look, I saw that poll and I thought to myself, my reflexive position of, well, look, if they need our help, they need our help. And even though I know that this is a made-up issue, meaning the problem with immigration is kind of the other stuff. It's like the immigration is often used to play one bottom of the economic scale against the other part of the economic scale. There's an odd thing of people needing ICE or believing they need ICE. ICE was only put into effect under George Bush. Now, I understand people have this idea of normality, that just because something has taken place over a period of time, that they believe that for whatever reason, something that persists should continue to persist. This, of course, is nonsense. Existence of a thing is not necessarily indicative of a reason for that thing to continue to exist. And ICE is not that old. It's not that old. This needs to be talked about differently. That's my point. I suspect that the way Sanders talks about this is the way to go about talking about it. So, what the fuck? Is this a part of the death of net neutrality? If you're going to pull punches on immigration, just back out of the subject altogether and let Democrats handle it. No, it's not that you pull punches. That is, you try to. I don't think you pull punches. I think you try to connect real world to it. Like, you try to make this point that immigration is not your problem. Meaning, if I'm talking to somebody who's hell-bent on this thing of immigration, I try to get across to them that that's not your issue. The issue is not necessarily people who come across the border. The DACA recipients, yeah, they should be allowed. You should use executive action if you need executive action to make those kids Americans. As for the other illegal immigrants in the country itself, yeah, you get illegal. You do something about the immigration system. I'm just making the point that the emphasis that Trump and Republicans are putting on it is a false god. It's not a real issue. That issue is used to obfuscate from actual calamities and problems in the country itself. This is a go-to issue. This is not an actual thing. I'm making the point that that needs to be made clear in 2 points. I guess my point is, look, you can't necessarily ignore that poll number. Can't ignore it. 69% is tremendous. It is a headwind. You have to find a way to talk about it. You have to find a way to talk about it that doesn't run into that poll. The poll I'm reading is the one that says people disagree with the way Trump is handling immigration. Look, I would say this. I don't think people want a kid outside screaming with screaming babies. Nobody wants it. I don't care who you are. There's no way I would believe that people say, yes, I like having babies ripped away from their moms. I don't think that's the case. That being said, if you ask people, people would say, by the same token, I think we need stricter immigration laws. Both of those things can be true. You can have a person that says, I hate the way the president is handling, but by the same token, I think we need stricter immigration laws. I'm making a point that you have to be able to talk to those people and get across to those people that the problem here is not immigration. That they're ills, the reason why they don't necessarily have their jobs. It is not the immigrant that is forcing somebody to give them a job. It is the capitalist that's making this choice whether or not to give that person a job. And when it comes down to this idea of, them streaming across the border, oftentimes they're streaming across the border because they're fleeing something, some kind of war zone or something. We have the resources to do it. Our problem is the way we've organized ourselves. Now, the question is, how do you make that argument? How do you make that case to the person who's shady about immigration? Who Republicans have told continuously that somebody is taking their jobs. They're taking their jobs. They're going to take your jobs. I've met people. They're maniacs. I've met these people who think this way. How do you get it across to them that your issue here is not the immigrant? That there are people in your system that are predatory from the standpoint of either your wages, either shipping jobs overseas. There are other factors that are built into the way the system works that's doing this, not the immigrant. I guess I'm making the point that this is an easy argument to scapegoat from the right. And it's made all the easier because of the way Democrats have essentially let down the middle class. I keep saying morality is emergent. And I say that to say, it's not that I think people are horrible, per se. It's just that I think people get in their heads what they think the world is like. And they have an idea on what they think they need. And when things get hard, sometimes those people become assholes. Now, again, not making a judgment on whether it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it is. I don't know what that percentage is, but that percentage clearly is there. Think of the number of people who are using drugs. The more stress on a society, the longer the hours a person works, the more debt the person is. It's a fucking pressure cooker. And sometimes people don't exert that out in the direction that it belongs. They point that fire and they point that fury sometimes at the least of us, especially when you get somebody like Trump who says, hey, there's your problem. There's your problem. So, that's my spiel on this. When people say they don't want their culture taken away, they mean they don't want white control to be dominated. Control to be diminished. Yeah, that's exactly what it means. Literally what it means. Not literally. We're taking our country back. Taking it back from who? Taking it back from who? Jason Medeiros. Any politician says, besides, why are we bombing people, is smokescreen for the real problems we face. This is kind of my point. The issues that we face are internal. It's not external. But those issues are magnified when you're at a point where you have a political class that essentially, well, look at what the Democratic Party is today. Do you honestly believe that that's a representation of what the left needs to be? Or the response that the left should have taken when Obama took over? Obama should have broken the banks. Instead, he threw his body to protect them. So, yeah. Windbag. No birth control means more kids are desperate. Yeah. Think about that. You end up having a kid that you don't want. They're actually going after Roe versus Wade. Baltazar, is strengthening our border security better than simply ending the drug war? Yeah. This is kind of my point, man. It doesn't make sense. Like, a lot of the stuff we do as policy just doesn't make sense in the least. All of it seems to be theater in order to avoid dealing with real stuff. It's like the Democratic Party. The way they lied continuously, never had an autopsy, and essentially just going from one failure to the next, pretending that everything is okay, we're completely united, and if we just continue to say that we're united, the world will be great, and there'll be lollipops and unicorns for each and every person. Oh my Jesus. Blogo Pogo. And corporate personhood has got to be ripped out of case law. Yes. There's a few things. I'm talking specifically about the politics of this particular case. Or this particular poll. Like I said, I looked at that poll, I was like, holy shit. 69%. I said often, we don't regard our history honestly, and part of that is I suspect most people don't know that ICE was created under Bush. I suspect they don't know. Um, I like Alexandria Cortez's answer to this. This thing of, look, this just was created. That doesn't mean we're opening borders, etc., etc. Because I would wager that people have certain ideas associated with this idea of getting rid of ICE. Like, that's all we got. They're our last and only line, and if we get rid of ICE, everything falls apart. I think that's what they have in their heads. Um, yeah, you got to explain it. Celebrate Scott Pruitt resigned 420 time. But who's he putting in next? Who's he going to appoint? If Donald Trump dropped dead today, the person who will go in would be Mike Pence. Am I going to celebrate if Mike Pence takes office? No. Now, who is Donald Trump going to put in besides Scott Pruitt? He's probably going to put in another Bond villain. So, I'll celebrate when I see him put in somebody who's, you know, not insane or not fucked up. But Trump, Jamal, stop bashing a protected class of people who are defined as corporations, also known as a legal construct. I love that. And I love that you know that. I love that you know that. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Proletariat culture is human culture. That's what side I am on. Right on. Yeah, right on. You know, when I say that, I've made this argument before that I have more in common with somebody who's essentially, broke and white than I do for somebody who's rich and black. Like, it has more to do with class, less to do with this idea of race. Democrats, but Crowley did this. He's like, I put an Asian American into this seat. I put a Hispanic guy. I put an Arab, so-and-so into this. It's like, yeah, dude, I get it. So what? So what? The distinction is class, not race. It's not that I'm against them putting certain people in certain positions because they want to represent these minority groups. Yes, I get it. I agree. But that's somewhat of a canard. I mean, that could be a red herring. So what? You put somebody in that spot if they're not actually representing my interests. That matters more. That matters more. A broke-ass white guy, welcome to the club. You know what I mean. I'm making the point that the distinction here that matters more are issues of class. Matters of class. Yes, race gets used in this case in the way we interact with our affairs. And yes, there's certain things that have been programmed into our fucking brains. I know for me, when my wife and I are planning this trip, and didn't include Africa. Didn't even think to include Africa. And one day we were like, well, wait a minute. Would you like to go to Africa? And I'm like, I don't know, man. I mean, fuck, man. All those starving kids. Now, the reason why I said that, and being slightly racist, is because I grew up with the only image of Africa being, I think, of Sally Struthers. Now, this is showing my age. Sally Struthers, I think that's her name. But she used to go to Africa, and she used to always be around these starving kids. This went on for years. Like, every year, you would have one commercial after the next, and me, being an insomniac, would see that shit over and over and over again at night. Starving kid, flies flying around him. Nobody gives the kid a sandwich. The cameraman is filming the kid, doesn't give the kid a sandwich. And they're like, look at the starving child. Look at that baby. Oh, that baby needs food. Wouldn't it be awesome if that baby had food? Yeah, you should give $2 so that baby can get a sandwich. It was that. That was my image. That was the only image that was beat into my brain for X number of years. That or slavery. Every so often, when you're talking about black history, well, that's different. You get the Harlem Renaissance, you get some of the other stuff. At least I'm talking about our education at school. But implicit understanding and implicit information, that was my image of Africa. Now, I knew that was false. Like, intellectually, I knew that was false. If you asked me, I would be like, well, yeah, there's no way that could be that way. But implicit, that's the shit that was in my head. That was the emotional bias. So we put Kenya on the ticket. We put Kenya, I think, Cairo. I've been to Cairo. I don't like going places twice, but my wife wants to see the pyramids. I guess my point is those things get in your head. You get these weird biases. Mourn former coal lobbyist A. Wheeler to replace Pruitt. Yeah, I told you, Trudy. I told you. I told you. I told you. I told you. Pete D. It was Sally Struthers. Yeah, that was my image. That was my image. So we expanded it. I don't remember how that started, but shit, what was the thing that started that? I had a reason for saying that. I promise. I had a reason for saying that. Welcome to the club. Yeah. Look, I guess my point is, there are certain things that we absorb unintentionally. You are a product of your society, whatever that society is. And however you turn out, whatever you do, to some degree, your society played a role in it. People like to absolve the society for obvious reasons. They want to say it's purely that particular individual's fault. But fact is, if that individual was in a different society, a different culture, he might have behaved differently. Um, all of us are subjected to this. That's not just me. All of us. All of us get these biases that are dug in us. We may push back against these things, and to some degree, it may be more or less, depending on the person. But I think all of us absorbs that shit in. So I understand that those things may be a part of it. What I'm talking about is going above and beyond that and recognizing that there's a larger reality here. That the economic fortunes in this country, there's no fucking reason we should be arguing about immigration. Like, we have the resources to do what we need to do. You realize it's like 95% of the wealth went to the top 1%. That number is staggering to me. That number is staggering to me. So when we're having this conversation about immigration, I find it pedantic. I find it readily ridiculous. How much money do we give away to the military? We lost $15 trillion, $21 trillion. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, the conversation about immigration is nonsense. It's nonsense. $5 trillion in 2015 alone. Gone. Just out of the blue. The military has no idea what it's done to it. But we're talking about immigration. We can't afford it. It's too much. They keep sending our kids here. Yeah, we keep blowing this shit up. Or at the very least, we've had all sorts of chaos in those countries. But yeah, they're sending our kids here. So come the fuck on. There are bigger issues. That's my point. It's a total distraction. Yes, Soviet winter. It's a total distraction. That's my point. That's my point. Tell Chris, soy boy, thanks for being the Democrats' Colbert when it comes to satire. Too bad he sold out. Well, Colbert, not so, well, depends on what you mean by sold out. I mean, he took a paycheck and stopped doing his character. He just became Colbert, talk show host. That is what it is. Paul Springer pocketed the auto industry bailout. He should burn. No, let's be more specific about that shit. We should have bought those companies, those car companies. We should have had controlling interests in those car companies. And in controlling interest in those car companies, the government should have started getting a profit. I don't understand why the government gives this shit away like this. We're being robbed. Like, imagine the airwaves, giving the airwaves away. Territories, giving territories away. Areas where they would have oil or something, just giving them away. How are you giving away public lands? And then turn around and say we're out of money. It's fucking amazing to me. Like, the shit that goes on, that is allowed, is amazing to me. Nobody in the public screams out, how are you giving our shit away? How are you giving it away? It's aggravating as all hell. It was really devastating to lose Colbert and Stewart in 2016. Yeah, it was. I like both. Now Ed Schultz is going too. Ed Schultz is going in a different way, yes, a more permanent way. I should say the countries they leave never recover. Snork. What's happened to Snork? People should have been given ownership of banks when they bailed out. Yeah, fuck yes. No hedge. Fuck yes. If we are bailing those banks out, those are our banks. We should own those banks. None of this non-controlling interest shit. We should own those banks. Period. This is kind of my point. They're giving our money away. And they're not necessarily working in the best interest. They are ideological actors that are not working on our behalf. When Obama had the opportunity to take those banks, he should have taken those banks. He should have taken those banks. I'm buying you out, fellas. Thank you for your help. I'll give it back at some point, but thank you for your help. And the money that was raised when those banks got back should have been used to pay down their debt. Period. That's what. Look, stop fucking around. Stop fucking around. Do you believe it or not? And yeah, either you're a true believer or you're not a true believer. Those banks should have been broken for their failures in this way. And there's no way. If you're going to represent, if you're a politician, you're supposed to represent us. It is not representing us to allow those banks to skate, nor is it representing us to allow Citigroup to choose the people who are in your administration. If you get the opportunity to take those banks, you should have taken those banks and you should restructure them in a way. Because think about what happened. All of that money was given. All of that money was given. And with no guarantees on how it was going to be used. At the exact same token, there were supposed to be programs to help homeowners. In which case, many of the homeowners fell through the cracks. Because nobody was paying attention to the programs. So the bankers protected. We didn't get a say, even though we gave all their money. Homeowners busted. You could have even taken that money and given it to the homeowners and let those homeowners pay off their houses. Let those people pay off their student loans. And right off the bat, you would have had an infusion into the bottom of the economic scale. The money into the bottom gets pushed directly into the economy. That's not what happened. That's not what happened. The system didn't fail. The rules of the system were just ignored. No, the system failed. It utterly failed. It's not, Trina, I disagree. It's not that the rules of the system were ignored. If your system doesn't accommodate itself, meaning if it's so unstable that people just kind of fly by the seat of their pants willy-nilly, then there's something inherently wrong with the system. Why is the system creating contradictions in such a way where something needs to pull people back from their natural impulses? People make this argument that the Soviet Union, that Stalin, essentially was responsible, or communism was responsible for its implosion. Okay, same rules apply here. The capitalistic system didn't necessarily have rules or structure in place that prevented it from going off the rails, and it went off the rails. Sounds like there's an inherent problem with the system itself, to me. It worked, but it didn't work for most people. Well, look, it works to accrue wealth at the top. That's what it does. That's what it does. Capitalism's rules are profit. Then the government adds a caveat so people don't starve. It's not exactly efficient or humane. Never mind the horrid incentives of death. Yeah. I mean, the whole idea of this, that you can have some kind of controls over people seeking the profit off of anything. It's like, I bet there are people willing to eat dead babies. I bet I can make that into a tasty snack. Dead babies. I'm going to make some dead baby snacks. Yeah, if you gave the capitalists the opportunity, they'll do it. I would even make the case that said the weapons that these guys sell that are murdering these people in Yemen and all these other countries are essentially an economy of death. You have people making bombs and boats and planes and trains and things that would absolutely decimate and destroy and dismember other human beings. Don't have to do that. That skill and acumen can be used in other ways in a society, but this is how we use it. Class war, my faith restored. Blogo pogo, class wars, right? Look, there needs to be a clear understanding of us versus them. Us being 99%. And you can even make a case this is 99.9%. But the 0.9% is not going to be on our side, so fuck them. The identity stuff needs to be sublimated. I don't mean ignore it. Not in the least. I don't mean ignore immigration. Not in the least. I'm just making this point that the commonalities between all of the people of particular demographics across all of these demographics are fundamentally similar and should be acknowledged as such. There are no innocent billionaires. They should be ashamed of themselves, let me tell it. They should be ashamed. I totally understand what you mean, Jamal. More than 9 in 10 registered voters say the economy is extremely or very important. Yeah, of course. I mean, think about it for the moment. You can hate my guts. You can absolutely hate my guts. But if you thought I had your economic interests at heart, would you give me the benefit of the doubt? Now, so say for the moment Sanders, and I know, look, Sanders to me represented the best option. An independent, not considered a Democrat, even by regular Democrats, and you had a lot of people who were in these other states like West Virginia who looked at Sanders and said, fair game. Even if I disagree with him on some of this stuff, I think he's earnest. And I guarantee you that earnestness will get you a hell of a lot further than some smarmy politician like a Clinton or Ted Cruz. I would even argue that Donald Trump, as clumsy as he comes across, that clumsiness comes across as authenticity to the less initiated. I don't know why, but it does. Comes across just lying to me. Division is never a good political strategy. It depends on what kind of division you mean. There's always some level of division. I guess I'm saying division in this case is a power base that includes a wide swath of the working class and that fights vigorously, completely, for that class. That's what I'm talking about. That accepts, or that takes into account the needs of the proletariat. That's what I'm getting at. Full-throated, no hedge, working class, populace. Campaigns that way, acknowledges, fights that way. Unabashed, full-throated, without any hedge in the least. I like to use this analogy, Logan, after injecting himself with a bunch of chemicals running through the forest. That's what I want in a politician, political leader. Let's not ask the fucking rich how they allowed to get rid of themselves. Yeah, we shouldn't. Fuck asking. I think it's a fair question to say, how did we get $20 trillion in debt? And who's going to pay for that particular debt? I mean, think about what's taking place. We've been looted. I mean, for the most part, we've allowed empire to devour the inside of the country itself. I mean, this is an amazing thing that's taking place. We're shocked as shit that the person who ends up as president is reality show host. At least we have entertainment as it goes down. I mean, goddamn. It is hard. $20 trillion. I'm angry at that number because I think to myself, what do you have to show for that number? Republicans don't care about the debt. Democrats don't care about the poor. That's what it boils down to. The Democrats must block the Senate, yes, with less than a quorum and steal the Supreme Court appointment. Yes, they do. But you shouldn't even have to tell them that. You have people like Joe Manchin that's going to be willing to back Trump up on this. Think about that. He's a goddamn turncoat. I'm not even a Democrat, and I acknowledge that he's a turncoat if he goes and makes that vote. Have you seen DM25? Blogo Pogo. I have not seen DM25. Hello, jerk. So the 1% controls the message. If you want to change the system, you will come across a lot of opposition unless you can trick the 1% into giving up power. So here's the weird part. I think Sanders kind of did that. I mean, you have this thing. I don't think they thought Sanders was a real campaign. I think it caught fire and they didn't have a choice but to cover him. I think at that point it was like, oh shit. We giving this guy a platform. He beat the stuffing out of Hillary Clinton in every one of those debates. And they tried to make it as a Sanders loss. It's like, dude, if anybody watched the debate, there's no way you can come across for that answer. Thousands of people at those crowds, and they pretend as if the guy wasn't even there. It still didn't work. I mean, Trump was outspent 2-1. Didn't work. People wanted something else. If they don't have 100% no votes in the Senate, they will look even weaker somehow and lose support, especially after Merrick Garland's seat was held hostage. That should anger them. Did you see Chris Matthews? Chris Matthews did a clip where he was raging, like foaming at the mouth, angry at them stealing his seat, and I don't blame him. I don't blame him. I don't blame him at all. They need to do whatever they have in their toolbox, scorched goddamn earth, to prevent the Republican from choosing, or Donald Trump from choosing his Supreme Court seat. I don't care what they have to do. I don't care what it is. If they need to take a, if Chuck Schumer needs to take a dump in the middle of the well of Congress in order to keep them from appointing that seat, then Chuck Schumer needs to do it. And he is not a patriotic American if he's not willing to do it. That's what I'm saying. In fact, each and every Democrat needs to be willing to do that, to get across, to discuss at what is taking place from the standpoint of the Supreme Court. And if they don't, they're turncoats. That's what I'm saying. Mark, they're not going to be call-ins on this show, man. Del McCanns. Joe Manchin, I love that, Joe Manchin, will cave to Trump. As Tom Hartman defended Manchin, saying he will vote for Democrats on his big election. And, oh, man, if that is true, show me that. Show me that clip. Show me that clip. Oh, God, show me that clip. I like Tom Hartman, but all of your dignity is out the window if you do that. All of it. Every last shred. There is no dignity left. Why even get up? Why even pretend as if you're representing anybody else if you're going to do that? And why? Why even back somebody else up who's going to do something like that? Think about what's taking place here. This is a big fucking deal. They stole somebody else's Supreme Court seat. And now this goofball may actually appoint a Latvian hooker to the Supreme Court. And Republicans will let him. So yeah, it's a big deal. The Democratic Party needs to use any and everything at their disposal. And any turncoat that decides to actually back him up on this needs to be punished. Please check out Varoufakis' IOF speech. I've seen, it's funny, I've listened to like 3 of his speeches this week. Jamal, do you believe in communism? Evan Brown, believe in is too strong. I don't know what that means. I don't believe in any particular system, if that makes sense. There's no such thing as utopia. Ultimately, you have things that you work to improve for the society. I don't have to believe in anything, if that makes sense. At the very least from the standpoint of the system. In fact, I try to stay away from it. Sometimes those people become, rabid about that stuff. Look, what I want and what I think we should focus on is that some of these things are technological solutions or technical solutions. How do you supply healthcare for each and every person on the planet? Okay, how do you do it? How do you arrange yourself in a way where people have access to the things that they need? Okay, how do you go about doing it? I'm not into the system stuff. I sometimes use various lenses, be it communism, well, I guess you can say socialism, but communism is just the end point after socialism gets its mark. Yeah, I'm going to say no, but I'm going to say no with a caveat. I don't have any hard feelings against any particular system. Any system if you were born into, you would think that system was perfectly okay, or you would fight or push against the system. And any new system you would probably dislike, or you maybe like, and you would end up in a similar system. I want freedom. I want to be left to my own devices. and I want to be able to go where I want to go. If communism is authoritarian and top down, then no. If it's set up in a way where there's democratic, then I don't care. I I, I have certain criteria that I want, and beyond that, I don't particularly care the system. I'm not anything, communist, socialist, anything else. If that makes sense, I don't mean to. I'm not trying to dodge it, but it's the answer to someone is no. I'm not anything. I'm not a communist or anything else. Do I believe in it? That's a difficult question to answer. Um, Belief is too strong, and I don't know what it means to say I believe in it. So I'm not going to answer that. Jamal, woke as fuck. No system works forever. Failure of the previous system shapes the next system, and so on. Cycle. Next steps forward, two steps back. Yeah, yeah. That's why it's kind of hard to answer that. I look at this stuff as when one fails, something else has to take over. If we don't implode, something else has to take over. Whatever that new permutation is going to be something that's supposedly better than the previous. So you had feudalism, slavery, capitalism. Then what's the next permutation is going to be? I would hope that permutation goes in a good direction, but I don't know that. I don't know that at all. So, but I don't like to tie myself to stuff like that because I feel like you start defending. Like a person said they were socialists, and so now they're out there battling stuff for socialist ideas. It's like, fuck, man, can we just have a fucking decent... Look, if what I would say though is, it's important to use those things as lenses, if that makes sense, like filters, ways of looking at the world, because some of the ideas that are in them will be right. Just saying. Um, the Communist Manifesto, where he's railing, like where he's in this thing, like railing in this proletariat fervor. It's amazing to read. Um, but is Marx going to be right about everything? Of course not. How would he? Now, am I going to be stuck defending stuff that's associated with Marx? Fuck no. Hell no. Would I use some of the ideas? Yes. To make my arguments? Hell yeah. Hell yeah. The goal for me is, what is the ultimate point? And the ultimate point for me is, I want people to have a decent life. I want people to understand that the point of their existence is not work. I want people to understand that they've essentially one permutation from the next, never actually looking at their scenario, asking whether or not this is the way they want to live and exist and organize themselves. We get programmed. This ICE thing is a good example, where you have this thing of something that's been around for a period of time. Because something has been around for a period of time, people take normality as being reason for existence, as if existence in and of itself justifies its existence. It's nonsense. That's utter nonsense. That's like saying the drug war or locking up stoners is the right thing to do because we used to lock up stoners, which is the right thing to do because we used to lock up stoners. It's fucking nonsense. It's utter nonsense. But that's the way we operate, especially within the confines of our lifetime, where it seems like this stuff is normal and this stuff has always been here. We don't necessarily have a contextual understanding that that stuff started within the scope of time only a few years ago, and in a particularly troubled time under another goofball president. I want people to wake up and, at the very least, acknowledge that 95% of the wealth going to the top 1% is madness and lunacy, and that any system that tells you that that's okay is a fucked up system. There's problems with the system that arrange and acts in that way. Now, I got to be honest. I'm not all that hard up on the isms. I don't particularly like them. What does a Star Trek universe look like, and what kind of ism is that? I don't know what that is. Is that a Venus project? Is that a communism? A techno communism? I have no idea what that is. I know at one point they had money. At one point they stopped having money. I know people have their needs met, and yet their rule sets. I don't believe that you're gonna have any system where something affects me, and I'm not gonna get a say in it. In the same way that if something affects you, that you're not gonna get a say in it. My point is, this idea of libertarianism, or American libertarianism, where you're just going to be free as a bird and all this other stuff is nonsense. You're always going to have some interaction with somebody else, meaning you're always going to have some kind of coordination of action um, in order to prevent these kind of antagonisms. There's no such thing as freedom without having access to food, clothing, shelter, without essentially having your needs met and having some level of affirmative existence. Um, yeah, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. So, Venus Project is a communism that ignores how to get communism and therefore the same as a utopian novel, not an ism. No, it's not communism. Yeah, it's Venus Project is not communism. I know what you mean. It looks like it, but it's not communism. Um, and yeah, he has no idea how to get there, or he had no idea how to get to it. I think he assumed that there was going to be some kind of just things fall apart. That's what I think he assumed. It's horrible, but as long as the United States continues to do itself, the quicker end comes. That can only be good for the rest of the planet. It depends. The United States has lost all self-access all across the globe, and the only power at this point that it seems to have is military. Spend all this money on the military. And look, this is what countries do when they're going downhill. Look at British Empire. Britain still has trouble dealing with the fact that it's now a vassal state of the EU. Um, yeah, I mean, look at Britain. Look at Rome, for that matter. When Rome was falling to pieces, it just has a certain cadence about it. I mean, it's these weird military enterprises and everything else. The United States spends like all this money. Where trillions of dollars. Like this is fucking insane. It seems like the only power that they can exert is military. It misses the point that it is no longer a unitary world or unipolar world. It misses it. But yeah. Look up left libertarianism, especially Kevin Carson. Some interesting ideas and criticizes the vulgar libertarianism of the right wing. Yeah, vulgar libertarianism is right. I don't even know why I don't even know how they turn that as an ism. That's just fucking vulgarity. I mean, ultimately, it just turns selfishness into some kind of political thing. And, you know, I got mine, fuck you. That's what they should call it. I got mine, fuck you. But look, no, being serious for the moment. I mean, it's hard to get across to the masses. Um, and I suspect a lot of that has to do with because they were born into a particular caste. They don't see it that way. They don't realize it's a program. But they were born into a particular program. So they act a particular way. They go about their way. Now, they believe that they're fighting for their country. Like when they're out there fighting for George Bush, they believe that they're fighting for their country. They're not fighting for their country. They're fighting for whoever's in office, whoever's in power. And the people who they're attacking is not just the people in those governments. They're actually killing real people. Shit's aggravating to me because it's like you have during the military, during World War II, when they were producing all of the goods and everything else that they needed, the United States became a manufacturing juggernaut. We supplied weapons, two-sided globes, like literally created so much shit that not only were we sending it in a Lend-Lease program, we were also putting fleets on both sides of the globe. Massive, 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 huge amount of infrastructure, like huge amount of building. We did that for a war. Afterwards, we had the Marshall Plan, where we built up those governments or built up those countries. You understand, though, that gives proof of concept that you can supply everything that you need to supply for everybody in this country. You just don't do it. All of those things at this point become a choice. It is a choice to have that much poverty in California. It is a choice to have that much poverty in Seattle, Washington. All these things are choices. All of the poverty that you have in this country, it's a choice. It's a fucking choice. Sad fucking choice at that. Alright, I'm gonna end this. As we've extremely strayed away from the point that I'm bitching about choice. So, to summarize, I do my Jerry Springer summary. Um, the country doesn't want to give her device by a staggering amount. It's amazing. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Fred Edwards. Yes, it does. Yeah, the National Defense Authorization Act allows essentially lying to the public. I was going to do a story talking about Britain's D notice, but for all intents and purposes, we have something similar now. So, all right, guys. Yeah. All right, let it end it here. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, everyone. And by the way, let's see. Bow like a leopard class war. Michael Jordan's gonna lose. I missed that one. That's fucking hilarious. Trudy celebrates. Scott Pruitt resigned for 20 time. Oh yeah, Trudy. I wasn't gonna mourn. Former co-lobbyist A. Wheeler replaces Pruitt. I said it before you could even get it out. That don't celebrate. Who's coming? Logo Pogo class war. My faith is restored. Bold like a leopard. Class war against Michael Jordan. Gonna lose. Gonna lose. Blogo Pogo. Have you seen DM25? Blogo Pogo. Please check out Varoufakis' IOF speech. And Perseus Go. Jamal woke as fuck. No system works forever. Failure of the previous system shapes the system. So the cycle, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Yeah, I agree, man. Unfortunately, that's aggravating. Because that means it's a derivative process. Like for all the bitching and moaning and pushing and tugging and everything else, the process to some degree becomes a small derivation from the previous system, which means I'm not going to have my Star Trek or my flying car for some time. Alright, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the Patreon. It's somber now. I'm not going to have my flying car. It's just going to be a small deviation to something else. It doesn't have to be a small deviation, by the way. It depends on what takes place. If there's a major shakeup, then there could be a major deviation depending upon who takes office. I still say after the banks failed in 2008, Obama could have extremely reshaped how society ran, especially if he would have taken the banks. Scalise. Hashtag Govgan. Govgan. I have no idea what Govgan is, but hashtag Govgan. Alright, guys. Y'all have a good one. Bye-bye.